guys just finished work, so you have a sense that this tweet was probably at work in the parking lot, and there's some other tweets that corroborate that story. So this is kind of scary to look at. If somebody was just like, here's a map of where you live, right? You'd be like, well, that's weird. But I think we can do a little better with technology. So I thought I would teach the computer to do this analysis on its own. So I spent a while trying to learn about clustering algorithms, and it turns out it's a complicated field, and it's an NP-hard problem, and there are various heuristics, and I spent days reading Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is just not coding. It's just not. So one night I was talking to my friend, and I was like, oh, I have this demo tomorrow, and I'm not done clustering, and it's NP-hard, and I don't know which algorithm to use, and he was like, just come over, and we'll get this done. So I went to his place, and we just hacked away that night, and my buddy Riz came up with this solution right here, which is, again, I said this is an NP-hard problem. This is the brute force solution. But it works, which is all that matters. So again, it's not efficient, but it gets the job done. And there'll be a lot of clusters with just one tweet, according to this algorithm, but I just ignore them because they're uninteresting. So you can see the results here on the map. So it's pretty successful. A bunch of clusters have been highlighted, the big one in the middle there. And it's not perfect. You can see there's some overlap and some bugs to sort out. But for the most part, it works. And it works well enough. So the next step, I thought, is so we have these clusters, and that's scary. It can be like, here's where you spend the most of your time automatically. But how can we make this even creepier for people, even more visceral? So they're like, wow, I really need to think about what I'm doing. And the next step then is to automatically classify the locations. So again, I pulled up Wikipedia's documents on document classification and read about filtering and probable models and AIs. And I was like, you know what, forget this. I just pulled up some of the big clusters that I knew, that I could tell by inspection where somebody was at home, and I just looked for keywords. So you can see these are some examples. Somebody was at home with their dog a lot, so I thought maybe people only tweet about their dog when they're home. People tweeting about sleep in bed. That's the sort of thing that people do when they're at home, or about being awake at night. And there are other types of locations that you can identify by keyword too, right? So at so-and-so's house, I mean, it doesn't get easier than that, right? And watching TV, right? Nobody watches TV at work. You watch TV at home, unless it's the World Cup, I guess. But, so what I'm doing now is, again, when I try to get a user's report, I have all their cluster data available. I scan through each cluster, look for these keywords that I've manually identified, and then I just assign a score to each cluster. And one cluster tends to win. So if you look at the tweets in this cluster where there are hundreds of tweets, it's quite clearly where this person lives. And if you zoom in, you can pinpoint it pretty accurately. And you could reverse geocode that if you wanted. I'm not at this point, because that's not really my goal. But it's pretty scary, right? And so this person isn't consciously, he's not like, hey, come to my, I'm at home, it's great, and taking pictures of their house or something. They're just tweeting about casual, mundane things that are going on in their life. And based on that, it's enough to extrapolate the type of location. And I haven't done it, but this could be easily extended, as I showed you, to workplaces and to friends' houses and to, I don't know, where else do people go, anything. But I thought this is an example from Toronto, and most people here aren't going to be from Toronto, so that's maybe kind of boring for you. So I thought we were in New York. Let's look at New York. So I got here Thursday night, set up in a coffee shop, and just let it map. And I have it mapping in real time, so I just let it collect tweets for a while. And this is about an hour's worth of tweets. And you can see that it's pretty busy here in New York. Lots of people are tweeting, lots going on. And so what I did is I just kind of clicked at them, and I was like, I'd get a username, and I'd be like, oh, this person looks like they might tweet a lot, and I'd check out their Twitter page. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And then I just did a database query again, aggregated everybody's tweets, and I was like, who are the most prolific New York tweeters that are geotagging? And so one example came up, and I thought I'd just run with it. So I put together this example on Thursday in just a little bit of time. So this is this person's Twitter tag, or Twitter page, and you can see a bunch of tweets there. And what's interesting, I find, about this example is that on this Twitter page, this person has thousands of tweets. None of these tweets here are geotagged. So only a small fraction of this person's tweets are geotagged, not a significant number at all. And that's still enough that we can extrapolate lots of details about them. So I ran it through the system, just plotted it, and you can kind of visually see, if you zoomed out, you'd see that this is a particularly popular cluster. The system works it into areas automatically. And then I decided to inspect the tweets. I was like, what type of location is this, just by hand? And I don't know if you can read that, but it says wide awake at an hour when I wish I were wide asleep. So this guy's in bed, can't sleep, and is tweeting from home. So again, this is an interesting example because the automatic classification failed, right? There's no little home icon there. So that's an illustration that there's room to improve the algorithm. And maybe I missed some keywords. Maybe it actually tried to tag a house somewhere else for him that was wrong. So that's interesting. It means there's more work for me to do. And so another thing I did, I was sitting around Friday afternoon between talks, and I thought I'd try to make it more interesting. So I added keyword support, and I just searched for the next hope and looked for people who were tweeting about next hope. And one that came up that was my favorite was this one. Ben Jackson tells me why I shouldn't tweet this picture. That was a talk about geotags in pictures and learning too much about people. But then I just asked the database. I was like, all right, which of these New Hope or Next Hope tweeters have lots of tweets that are in New York, San Francisco, or Toronto? And I came up with one. Michael, I don't know if you're in the room, but I'd love to talk with you after. So here are just some tweets kind of in the Hotel Penn area. And so if I zoomed out a bit, though, there were tweets all over the New York City greater area. And in particular, I know that Michael likes hanging out on the beach. And what I also know, the system did make a guess as to try to classify his house. And I'm not going to show it because he may be in the room. But again, if you're here, Michael, I'd love to chat with you after and see if I'm right. And if not, see if I can improve it. So the result, I mean, the system, it works really well, right? Like I showed you a case where it nailed it spot on. And again, if you zoom in, you can get right into the crescent, right to the house itself. And that's the beauty of data, right? Like I said, one geotag is just an anecdote, but many are data. And you can use that to even out the errors. Because if your GPS error is somewhat consistent and truly random, then the center of all those tweets is the actual true center over time, right? So even if you're off by 500 meters, if you tweet 1,000 times, that's enough to really pinpoint it down. And so you have to keep in mind that I'm just some guy, right? I've been trying to do classes, I've been working on a thesis, I've been going to concerts apparently, and just trying to find time to work on this as my project. And it works pretty reasonably. And so what could somebody with resources do, right? Paying multiple programmers, paying people to classify what different types of locations are, right? What could people with untold budgets do? No accountability. And it goes further than that. I did this all on data that people chose to make public, right? I mean, nobody forced them to post their geotag tweets, although the dialogues encouraged them to. But other organizations have way more data. So if you, just thinking about Twitter, right? If you tweet via SMS, your cell phone company knows where that came from and can tag that with the location. The NSA knows where that came from and can tag it with your location. But it goes past tweets, right? So I mean, what if you text message somebody? I don't have access to that and I can't do this sort of analysis with it. But there's no reason, the NSA, we know they have wiretaps everywhere, right? It's just a fact. And there's nothing stopping them from, and they know your location. So there's nothing stopping them from building a similar database with all these other disparate pieces of information they have, and just having that much more data to do the analysis with. And I think that's kind of terrifying. But again, what's the big deal? Where you live is public knowledge. Most of us are probably in the phone book, and there are credit reports on us, and there's all sorts of information. So why is this a big deal? Couple reasons. First, I mean, again, like I said, as you post more and more, it stops being trivial facts and starts being something that you can work with and analyze. And more important, it's not just, this is where you live. It's also what you do while you're at home. It's who you're with, because maybe you tag your friend as watching the show with you. Maybe you don't tag your friend, but they're tweeting at the same time too, and they have a cluster of tweets at your house. Now we know that there's this connection there. Maybe you went to a HackerCon and you tweeted from there, and then there were overlapping tweets with other people. Now suddenly you're on lists, right? I mean, who knows what's happening with this? And it's not ephemeral, right? So a conversation takes, we could have a conversation and then it's done, and maybe the person forgets what we talked about, or maybe they remember but they don't tell anybody. But every tweet